What do you think the average IQ of this group is, huh?
Can you see Texas up there on your high horse? What do you know about these people?
Just observation and deduction. See a propensity for obesity, poverty, a yen for fairy tales. Folks putting what few bucks they do have into little wicker baskets being passed around. I think it's safe to say that nobody here is going to be splitting the atom, Marty.
You see that? Your fucking attitude. Not everybody wants to sit alone in an empty room beating off the murder manuals. Some folks enjoy community, the common good.
Yeah, well, if the common good's got to make up fairy tales, then it's not good for anybody.
Gentlemen, welcome to the Daily Dose. In the past year, I've witnessed no fewer than 2 incidents in which friends of mine were physically assaulted by a girl at a bar while going out. Literally, they were punched in the face by a girl who felt they were wronged by my friend, a different one each time, not the same guy. Typically, the transgressions were as mild as telling a girl that her hair was in my friend's drink. That was in one case. And in the other, my friend informed the girl that she cut him in line while waiting for a drink. Now, he wasn't very nice about it. He did say something to the effect of, "Hey, you're not hot enough for that," which of course wasn't very nice. But to have that instigate a physical assault is a bit of an extreme response. In both cases, the girls were immediately kicked out and my friends were allowed to stay. And we all had a laugh about it. In both cases, a couple girls walked up to my friends afterwards and said that was pretty cool. In any event, I think what both of these incidents highlights is an underlying hostility and anger amongst women in our society today that is very real and very visceral, and although it may not be justified from our perspective, is very much justified from theirs. In Western society today, women actually feel truly victimized, as if they are under a form of societal oppression that keeps them from achieving their own dreams and aspirations, and forces them to live under an oppressive society which only favors men. This is truly astonishing because there is no greater segment of the population on planet Earth that is more privileged than the American white female. That, in and of itself, is a topic for another video, however. In this video, I'm going to analyze how this situation even came to pass. The feminist movement of the 20th century has clearly tapped into a reservoir of growing anger and resentment, and I would say actually exposed some reasonable grievances amongst women in our society. However, starting around the 1970s and 80s, this movement was co-opted by mainstream media and used as a utility to convert this movement into a means for mass consumerism. Judging by how men are portrayed in television and movies today, this is highly successful. Shows such as Everybody Loves Raymond, The Simpsons with Homer Simpson, King of Queens, all portray men as bumbling fools who would be nowhere without their wives, and their wives are constantly under duress, dealing with their husband's folly as they try to raise their kids and manage a semblance of a career. Throughout a generation of this mass media messaging, women have grown to actually believe they are oppressed by the men in their lives and society as a whole, and that they actually live lives of silent desperation. This has translated into a healthy bottom line for Hollywood and television executives and consumer culture, YouTube channels, music, and anything else that is delivered via mainstream outlets. And so long as that's the case, we will continue to see shows like The View with skyrocketing ratings, and movies like Ocean's 8 and the Ghostbusters remake, and the universities who enroll more women than men by a large margin. This phenomenon is worth studying very closely, because if MGTOW continues growing the way it is, I can see this happening to the MGTOW community as well. It is worth mentioning that the shows I pointed out earlier, such as The Simpsons, Everybody Loves Raymond, and King of Queens, were all created and produced by men, yet they pander to the female psyche to the tunes of billions of dollars. As the MGTOW population grows, we have to be very, very wary to make sure that this does not happen to us. In order to do so, we have to closely study the tools that are used by mainstream media to invoke this agenda. Those tools typically tap into a deep emotion, an emotion buried deep in our psyche that only come out when instigated by the proper stimuli. This is typically referred to as triggering. When we see articles, TV shows, or movies, etc., that trigger our emotions in ways that are consistent with anti-feminism and the MGTOW ideology, if there is such a thing, we have to be considerate of the source. If the source is a mainstream outlet, such as MSNBC, Huffington Post, or any of those mainstream media platforms, be aware that we are being manipulated into becoming consumers. The mainstream media outlets at that point will have identified the MGTOW community as large enough to sell product to in the form of television shows, advertising, or actual merchandise. That is exactly what happened with the feminist movement, as it was co-opted by the mainstream media. An encouraging sign is that MGTOW as a whole seems to have rejected the neoconservative movement amongst female YouTube channels. Many pillars of the MGTOW community have rejected several of these channels, such as Lauren Southern. We should keep this in mind as MGTOW continues to grow and we see more and more references to it beyond the subculture of YouTube and certain blogs. As it slowly seeps into the mainstream, be guarded in your consumption of mainstream media culture. Unfortunately, I am sad to say that I do believe much of this will fall on deaf ears, as a lot of MGTOW men are only there because they have been summarily rejected by society and will gladly go back into the mainstream as soon as women show interest in them. They are there not by choice, but by force. These are the same people who will go to movies that champion MGTOW principles, who will read the articles controlled by leftist media, who will buy the merchandise owned by the same corporations. These are the useful idiots among us, and it will be foolish of me to pretend that I can compel them to act against their base interests. However, for those of us who are not held hostage by our emotional impulses, understand the mechanisms at work here. If our society continues along this path, and MGTOW continues to grow along its current trajectory, we will have to confront this adversary, and it is a tremendous one. Be ready for it. It's coming.